It's terrific. Thank you. Well, welcome to the third General Assembly, Organizing for a Future of Equality. My name is Katherine Spillar. I'm the Executive Director of the Feminist Majority Foundation and Executive Editor of Ms. Magazine. I hope all of you subscribe to Ms., join the Ms. community so that you can stay connected long after you leave this conference to all of the work of this movement, not only here in the United States, but all over the world. Ms. reports globally as well as what's happening right here in the U.S. So I hope all of you will join the Ms. community and stay connected with us. We need to stay connected as a community. A couple of announcements before we get started. Tomorrow morning, for those of you who are able to stay with us, is the Congressional Visits Day. And if you are able, you hadn't made your final decision yet about whether to stay, I urge you to stay. Your voices are needed on Capitol Hill, and it's a very, very critical time to be up there letting your voices be heard, talking to members of Congress, talking to their staff. They need to hear from us. And we have a wonderful program planned with legislative aides to several of the members of Congress, some who we've worked with for years, others fairly new, who will be talking about what it's like to work in Congress and how you can maybe think about either getting an internship or working after you graduate for a member of Congress. So it'll be a wonderful opportunity for you to ask not only about the issues, but to learn about how you could become part of what happens on Capitol Hill. You need to be at the Capitol Visitor Center by 9 a.m. The briefing starts at 9:30, but we urge you to get there as close to 9 a.m. as possible. There's security that you have to go through, frequently a line forms. It's the Capitol Visitor Center. We're going to have coffee and I think other stuff so that you can leave here and get over there and be in line and be ready to start at 9:30. A second announcement that I wanted to make this morning, for those of you who attended the town hall yesterday afternoon with Tina Chen and Kathleen Biden, they stayed quite a long time afterwards talking to many of you, answering your questions, asking you what was happening on your campuses. They very much want our ideas for what to feature in the Women's Summit, the White House Women's Summit, a little bit later this spring. But just as importantly, a couple of the campus groups told them that on their campuses, white power groups had formed and had started to become quite active, harassing feminists, harassing African Americans, harassing other people of color on campus. They were shocked to hear it. They had not heard this before. And so they asked us to make an announcement this morning if there's any other colleges or universities that are experiencing similar activities, we need to hear from you. Let any of the staff, any of the volunteers with this conference know so that we can get the information to Tina and to Kathleen. They were very, very interested. So with that, I think we should get started. We've got an incredible lineup of speakers this morning to talk about how we're going to be organizing for the future of equality. I couldn't be here yesterday because I was in New York. Yesterday was the beginning of the 60th session of the Commission on the Status of Women for the United Nations. And the Feminist Majority Foundation and our Girls Learn International program, which you're going to hear about in just a few minutes, organizes every year a delegation of high school students from across the country and adults who accompany them to be advocates and delegates at the Commission on the Status of Women so that girls' voices are heard in addition to women's voices, and that girls' issues are are considered as part of the deliberations during the Commission on the Status of Women. This year we have 47 high school delegates, 2 boys and 45 girls from all across the United States, from Louisiana, from Iowa, from Ohio, from Minnesota, from California, from Virginia, from New York and New Jersey. They are joining some 5,000 women who will be coming in from all over the world women's rights advocates, feminist leaders, for a week of activities, and actually it goes 2 weeks. We participate for the first week to assess the progress that has been made for women and girls all over the world, and to lay out an agenda for moving forward for a world of equality. In fact, the focus of the entire Commission on the Status of Women this year, the theme, it's called Women's Empowerment, and it's linked to sustainable development. And what's being talked about are the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Late last year, the United Nations, including the U.S., which of course is a member state of the United Nations, completed deliberations and debate on an agenda to, by the year 2030, to have eliminated poverty and hunger throughout the world, to ensure healthy lives, and that includes very explicitly access to reproductive health services and rights for women and girls, to ensure quality education for all, to ensure access to clean water and sanitation, to promote sustainable economic growth, to take urgent action on climate change, to combat climate change, to promote a just and peaceful societies, and critically and very central to the entire 17 goals that were laid out to be achieved by the world by 2030, very central throughout the 17 goals, the concept of gender equality and empowering all women and girls. They talked very explicitly about the need for equal representation in parliaments and elective office, about access to full range of health services, for political power, and for full equality under the law. These are called the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them. Now, how is the world supposed to achieve them? Well, each country, including the United States, is supposed to develop a plan of action to achieve the goals in each country. So the U.S. is supposed to be establishing a plan of action that will every year review progress along the way and set out objectives to be achieved. So this is an agenda not just for the rest of the world. This is an agenda to also hold accountable the United States. So it becomes a framework for all of us to be organizing and working for equality, if you think about it. A really remarkable opportunity to hold our own elected leaders in Congress and in the administration accountable for achieving these goals for women and girls here in the United States. So on this panel this morning, you're going to actually hear from people who are working on different aspects of this agenda. You're going to hear about the work being done for economic equality for women and girls, for reproductive justice, for elections and political empowerment, for gender equality and empowerment for women and girls in Afghanistan, where some of the most systematic oppression of women's and girls' human rights occurred under the Taliban, and where women are still struggling to secure their rights going forward. And you're going to hear what young feminists in high school are doing to organize for change and equality. But before we get to the first speaker this morning, I just wanted to focus on two aspects that I hope are part of all of our work as we move forward organizing for equality and for change. Very critical, we must finally ratify the Equal Rights Amendment in this country. We must put women into the Constitution, the highest law of the land. It gives us the toughest laws to fight with when we counter discrimination, whether it's in employment or economic opportunity, gender-based violence, in education, in all aspects of our lives. And we will use the Equal Rights Amendment to fight for access to contraception and to abortion for all women in this country, no matter their income. And we will work to end, by using the Equal Rights Amendment, discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. Already, this Department of Justice under the Obama administration is using Title VII of the Civil Rights Act to say that Title VII, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in employment, also applies to discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. That is being argued in our courts today. If we could have the Equal Rights Amendment, we could strengthen those arguments as we move forward. So I hope all of you are learning about the Equal Rights Amendment. There's information in your kits, the 3-state strategy. We just need 3 more state legislatures to vote to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment, and then we are going to fight to make sure that the Supreme Court and the Congress of this country recognize that the Equal Rights Amendment has been finally ratified. So I hope you'll join this fight wherever you are in this country, wherever you are in college or afterwards. We must do this in our lifetimes, and we must do it urgently to reach equality for women and girls. And my last hope is that all of us are working this year in the elections. This November will shape the future of this country for your generation, the direction this country will take. And all too often, young voices are suppressed at the voting polls. The voter suppression laws that have been passed in North Carolina and Ohio and Texas and in many, many states across this country are aimed at you, are aimed at young people, and are aimed at people of color. We must fight these laws, but as importantly as those laws are being fought, we must organize to overcome them. And that means organizing in your campus community. And not just as it gets close to Election Day, campaigning that everybody should go and vote, but it's starting right now. Holding your college and university administrations feet to the fire. Under the Higher Education Act, colleges and universities are required by law to encourage voting. You have a right to register and vote where you go to school. That has been litigated before the Supreme Court decisively in your favor. And even though you're already registered maybe where your parent or parents live, you can still register where you're going to college and vote there on Election Day. And it's important because you're more likely to vote if it's close by. But your college and university administrations are required to do more than just hand out some voter registration forms. Really, to fulfill the letter and the spirit of the law, they should be getting voter registration information to every student on campus during class registration, during orientation, during move-in at the dorms. During the first 2 weeks of classes, every professor should be required to announce that you can register and vote here where you're going to school, pass out the voter registration forms, pick the forms back up, and get them to the administration to get you registered. That is what colleges and universities that really want students to participate are doing. But to make that happen, you've got to start meeting with your administration officials now. And grab a coalition of other groups that want to make sure that students are voting. The student government, all of the coalition of groups that you work with on the issues that you're so active on. Go into the president's office, get to the dean of students, demand specifics, not okay, we'll do something. Demand specifics, and including that they get early voting on campus and voting on Election Day on campus. You should not have to go searching for a ride to a poll halfway across town to vote. You should be able to vote on your campus. But to do that, you must demand it. So that's to get to political equality in this country and to get to legal equality. And you're going to now hear about some of the incredible work being done by our sister organizations on a range of issues, all in this framework of reaching full equality for women and girls by 2030. So we got to hurry, as we've only got 15 years. So I would like to begin this morning with Michelle Bachelor. Michelle is the Deputy Director of In Our Own Voice, a national Black women's reproductive justice agenda, a national initiative to amplify the voices of Black women and to secure reproductive justice for all women and girls. Before coming to In Our Own Voice, Michelle was the creator and of the Minority Leadership Program, and she oversaw the domestic and global programming at the National Alliance of State and Territorial AIDS Directors. She's on this program this morning because her colleague, Marcella Howell, who was supposed to be on yesterday's program, was injured on her way here. We're all sending her our good wishes, but they persevered to make sure they could tell you about this important work. Please welcome Michelle Bachelor.
Good morning. Wow, nice. So this was an unexpected pleasure, as Terry said, and you know, definitely wish Marcella all the best, and I can say that I believe she is on the mend. So, but you know, it is something that we felt passionate about, and I really want to thank Ellie and the Feminist Majority for having us here, and it's just so wonderful. You all are just so beautiful. To look out and see these young faces, it really is energizing for those of us that have been doing this for maybe a little bit longer than others. But just to tell you real quick, In Our Own Voice is the National Black Women's Reproductive Justice Agenda. And we were formed in the fall of 2014. And really, our objective was to form and build a proactive and sustainable national reproductive justice organization that is specifically focused on Black women. And, you know, we felt that this was important because at the time, there really was not a national voice speaking for Black women. We had women of color, we had the, you know, Latinas, Asian Pacific Islander, and we really felt it was important that we would add our voices to their voice. And so we formed, and we work in coalition. We have, we started out with 5 members that are throughout the country. So Black Women for Wellness is in California. We have New Voices for Reproductive Justice. It's in Pennsylvania and Ohio. We have 2 organizations in Atlanta, Sister Love, Inc., Spark Reproductive Justice Now, and then we've just added Sister Reach, which is out of Tennessee, and Women with a Vision in Louisiana. Great organizations. We really feel that the strength that we bring is that we do work in coalition. All of our members specifically focus on Black women. That is why we are member together, and we focus on reproductive justice. And I'm sorry, I forgot Black Women's Health Imperative here in D.C. And so, you know, when asked yesterday to speak here, I wasn't really quite sure what I was going to talk about because Marcella, my boss, is very eloquent and had prepared. So I you know, I have to start with the basics. So I just looked up, okay, equity, you know, and equality. What does that mean? So it means the state of being equal in status, rights, and opportunities. So I said, let me start there. And how does our organization speak to equality? What is our contribution to getting us to a place of equality? And really what it is we each bring our strengths. We focus on policy. That's what we're here for. We want to change culture, change the narrative, and change the environment, the legislative environment around access to safe, affordable, quality reproductive care in the form of abortion access, comprehensive equity, or I'm sorry, a contraceptive equity, and comprehensive sexual education. And we do this with 3 core strategies: building leadership. So looking out here, you are the leaders that we're looking to. And what we want to do is, and are doing, is creating spokeswomen, you know, that can speak out, that can share the lived experience. You know, we're talking with legislators at all levels, federal, you know, national, state, local, and, you know, I can go in there, give a spiel. I've been in DC long enough. I know, you know, how it works. And, but they need to hear from you all, from leaders that have the lived experience, that can say that, yes, I'm a black woman, I make 64 cents for every dollar that a white man makes, but I also, my dollar goes much further. 85 cents of every dollar that's spent in the black community is a black woman's dollar. And so, yeah, it's good. How does that impact you? What does that mean? If we're going to get to our dollar that we worked hard for and we earned, they need to know how that impacts you, how that impacts your community. We need to hear the lived experiences. And so that's one thing, the leadership in creating spokeswomen. Advocacy, obviously, we've got to talk. And we each have our strengths. You know, within our 7 partner organizations, everyone has their strengths. Some focus on LGBTQ, some focus on voter engagement, others focus on environmental justice issues and the intersection with reproductive justice. You know, and so we definitely try to play to our strengths. But the advocacy has to come. You know, a lot of times we sit in rooms, and I used to work in HIV for about 15 years, and we'd sit in a room and everybody's rah, 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 because, you know, we're here with a common cause. We need to go out of this room. We need to talk to the people at every opportunity we have. Not everyone is going to want to tromp up to the hill, even though you really should, to advocate. But you can advocate at every opportunity you have, whether you're sitting in your school cafeteria and talking about the issues, and it's okay if you don't agree on the issues, but you're talking about them, you're getting people to think, you know, you're pressing them. Go to your county councils, go to your, you know, every conversation matters. So advocacy, education, we're focused on that. And then movement building, the strength in numbers. We've got to get out and vote. As black women, we do vote. And we usually vote progressive. But we can't sit back and rest on that. We definitely came out, showed out 2008, 2012. And, you know, now what we're trying to do is, all right, how do we get black women to replicate that again? How do we get them out there? It was an exciting time. It was change. But black women didn't just vote for Obama because he was a black man. We vote on issues. And when we vote, we bring our whole house with us. We bring our community with us. And so that is what we have to tap into that again. And that is what we're doing for equality, that we need to get progressives in there. But in addition to getting out and vote, we need to be the candidates. And that is something that, you know, I was at a meeting last week, and they asked everyone to turn to the person next to them and ask, will you run? Because apparently people need to be asked. So we need to be the change we want to see. I know it's cliche, but that's the truth. And I know I only have 5 minutes. I know you're pushing me. One thing that, I will say, see, it's a privilege of being first. No, I'm gonna, because there's a lot that we're gonna hear about. But, one thing that we're focused on as we look to create a more equitable society is for us, for our partners, we're no longer necessarily looking to be asked to sit at the table. We're done with that. We are proactive at this point. We're bringing our own table. We are in the chairs. We're going to set it. And you know what? We're going to have people asking us to sit at the table. So I thank you all for having me, and I look forward to hearing what everyone else has to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, and for jumping in at the last moment. The important work of the National Black Women's Reproductive Justice Agenda and In Our Own Voice, especially at this time, making tremendous progress in advancing issues and getting rid of the Hyde Amendment, which has for so long denied access to safe abortions for poor women in this country. Next one, I hear from Terry O'Neill. Terry is the president of the National Organization for Women, which, by the way, is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. Terry is an attorney, a former law professor. She began her feminist activism in the 1990s in Louisiana, fighting extremists, including David Duke, who suddenly is back in all of our lives. She is the former president of Louisiana Now and New Orleans Now political organizer. I've had the pleasure of working with Terry over several years and look forward to the next huge election victories. Terry, please join us.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, good morning, everyone. I am so honored to be here. This is one of the most exciting conferences that I know of every year, to see all of these young women in the room ready to take charge, ready to contribute to the political engagement that this country needs. So thank all of you for being here. Thank you for your energy, and thank you for your leadership. I also want to thank Michelle Bachelor for her words. We no longer are coming to ask for a place at the table, and women of color, I think in particular, are justified to demand their place at the table in politics and in other realms. As my friend, former Ambassador Carol Mosley Braun says, we have to demand a place at the table. If we're not at the table, we will be on the menu. Yeah. So, as Kathy said, yes, the National Organization for Women is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. June 23rd, 24th, 25th, and 26th, we will be having a big celebration in Washington, D.C., on Capitol Hill at the Hyatt Regency. So we're really excited about it. We're going to be honoring our founders. We're going to be honoring all the former presidents of NOW, including, obviously, Ellie Smeal, who is a former president of NOW. We are also, however, taking this opportunity to look to the future. What must the next 50 years look like? How far have we come, and what do we need to do now to take the fight for women's equality to the very next level? I am so proud to let you know that last summer at NOW's annual conference, the organization culminated 3.5 years of looking at our structure and of modernizing the structure to move into the 21st century to really fill the needs of today's activists, but also to recognize that the barriers to equality today are quite different from what they were in the 1960s and 1970s when NOW was just getting started. Right? One of the things that we did last year as we revised our bylaws was we changed our statement of purpose. The statement of purpose created in 1966, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, said NOW's purpose is to take action. And by action, we meant policy. We wanted to enact laws, not just put out papers. We want laws and implementation. And action means getting that policy in place, whether through demonstrations, through getting arrested, through lobbying, through lobbying, but get policy in place and then enforce that policy. So the former statement of purpose was to take action to bring women into full participation in the mainstream of American society. It was a great statement of purpose. It was really good. Here's how we changed it in the new bylaws. Now's purpose is still to take action. It is to take action through intersectional grassroots organizing to lead societal change. Because we are no longer satisfied to be part of mainstream society, we know that it is on us to create a truly feminist society that will acknowledge that equality doesn't look the same for someone who looks like me as it does for someone who looks like Michelle, someone who looks like the women on this panel. It does look different, and we have to not only recognize the intersectional barriers that are holding people back, but we need to create intersectional policy solutions to get there. You know, for decades, really beginning in around 1971, now actually recognized the interlocking nature of the barriers holding us back. My first NOW meeting was in 1990, I want to say 1992 or 1993, and I go to this meeting, and on the wall there's a sign that says, sexism, racism, homophobia, connect the dots. Right? So for a long time, NOW has recognized that sexism, racism, homophobia are of a piece, and we must end all of them together, or we will not achieve our goals. So ending racism, the NOW's 6 core issues for a very long time have been achieving reproductive rights and justice for all women, ending racism, achieving civil and human rights for LGBTQIA people, ending violence against women, because violence is a mechanism for enforcing sexism, racism, and homophobia, economic justice for all women, and getting women into the Constitution, as Kathy said, at last, through an Equal Rights Amendment. So those have been our 6 core issues for a very long time. The new statement of purpose, in my mind, what does it mean to embrace intersectionality in our work to achieve real equality? Well, to my mind, what that means in part is when we are working for example, for racial justice, we must do so with a gender lens. We must do so with a gender lens. We must include women and girls of color in racial justice initiatives. Let me just give you one example. Recently, I was down in Oklahoma City for the sentencing of Daniel Holtzclaw. How many of you know that name? Daniel Holtzclaw, the police officer who systematically sexually assaulted specifically African-American women. He targeted African-American women who had had some kind of involvement with the justice system, and he targeted them for sexual assault, figuring that he could get away with it over and over again. He's a sexual predator. I was down there for the sentencing to stand in solidarity with his victims who had been viciously attacked in the local, the Daniel Holtzclaw's supporters had put up a Facebook page and a GoFundMe, and they were not just claiming that he was innocent. They were claiming he was innocent because his victims were not worthy of being believed, were not worthy of being protected, and all they were was they were women, they were drug addicts, they had been prostitutes, you name it, they were being called all kinds of things. So I went down there. One of the things that even I did not know until I got to Oklahoma City was this. Of all of the police misconduct complaints that are made in the United States of America, the most common is the use of excessive force. But the second most common is sexual assault. The second most common complaint of police misconduct is sexual assault, and nobody knows this. That is an example of something that we need to look at, and it actually disproportionately impacts women of color, sexual assault by police officers. You can look in the schools as well. Currently, my organization is creating a nationwide strategic action program to end the sexual assault to prison pipeline. Because it turns out that when you're looking at the school-to-prison pipeline for girls, and particularly girls of color, what starts the whole thing rolling is a sexual assault or some kind of sexual trauma. She presents in the school with sexual trauma, and in a zero-tolerance school, she is slammed over into punishment instead of receiving the social services interventions that she needs. That's the sex assault. That's an example of putting a gender lens on racial justice. Intersectional policies also require that when we look for gender justice, we must no longer be colorblind. We must not be colorblind. We must recognize that attacks on our reproductive freedoms look one way for some groups of women and look something different for another group of women. And yeah. I'll just give you one example of that. Melanie Campbell, who runs the Black Women's Roundtable and the coalition, the National Coalition for Black Civic Participation, her organization did a survey, I don't know, a year ago or 6 months ago, where they asked, what are the considerations? They asked women, what considerations do you take into account when you're deciding whether or not it's time for you to start a family and get pregnant? They wanted to know, what are your personal calculations around reproductive health care? Well, many women across all races said, I don't know if I can afford it. That's my first consideration. Can I afford to have a child right now? But for African American women, it was either the top reason or the top consideration or the second highest consideration was this: I don't know if I can keep a child safe into adolescence and young adulthood. So police brutality is a reproductive justice issue. It is an issue of whether we can safely have children. And let me say, not me. It is not an issue like that for me, but it is an issue that as a feminist, as an anti-racist white ally in the feminist movement, is it an issue that's an issue that I will embrace and work my heart out to change. That is what we mean when we say intersectional organizing. So thank you all for all the work that you're doing. Thank you for being here. Don't forget the 50th anniversary of Now. Go to now.org. You can get a lot more information about it. Just a little shameless plug there. And go out and change the world. Thanks, everybody.
And now I have the honor, I'm so excited to introduce Charity Blackwell. Was anybody in the art panel? Yes! So you may have seen her there. Charity was born in Arizona and raised in South Carolina. I know we got a lot of South Carolina folks in here. In 2013, Charity graduated from Trinity. And straight from college, she served as a soccer program coordinator / poetry teacher / soccer coach for the nonprofit DC Scores. She is constantly involved in the poetry scene in DC and strives to advocate for her generation and the youth. She currently works for the Department of Commerce and just recently completed her master's program in communications from Trinity University. So give it up for Charity.
Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Awesome. And y'all had me come up after her. It's all good. It's all good. I don't know how I can do this. Can y'all hear me like this? Yeah. I don't really like using the mic, sorry. Can y'all still hear me like this? Yeah. So, yeah, that kind of sums up who I am. Poetry here and there, whatever, poetry this, and, career taking off a little bit. I'm just all right now. Grab a mic for the entire audience on the web. They can't hear you if you don't have a mic. Can I use that one? Here, you can use this one. Oh, here, right here. Hello? I have a mic. Okay, so let's see. So yeah, what was I saying? Doing poetry. And
So yesterday, everybody that was at the art panel discussion, we talked, what I was emphasizing on a lot was going after your passion. I see that a lot of y'all have a lot of different passions. And one of my passions clearly is poetry, and it's important. Yes, yes. And it's important when you have a passion, you have a gift, to channel that energy the best way possible into a positive light. And so that is my takeaway before I do this poem for y'all real quick. So I started this poem yesterday. Anybody familiar with the Chris Brown and Rihanna situation? Okay, and if you're not, you fell off the face of the earth because that was crazy. So I started this poem, but we only had 10-minute sessions, and I got cut off like literally halfway through it. So I'm gonna finish it for the people who are there, and of course for all of y'all. So I can't do what I need to do. Okay. She said that Rihanna got what she deserved. I actually heard it. I had to pinch myself just to convince myself that I was not dreaming. Did my ears deceive me? It was my junior year of undergrad, women's gender communications class, all women. Domestic violence was the topic of discussion, no judgment, open floor, free from assumptions, and it got pretty deep. Personal stories merged with streams of tears. Testimonies of years of overcoming fears, heart-to-heart advice from peer to another peer, a safe place, a safe space. Until a classmate switched gears and I remembered it cleared this girl here. Her body language said that she lacked common courtesy or common sense, or had a sense that not only things common to her can make sense. She said, I feel sorry for y'all, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think that you're telling it all. Honestly, in reality, couldn't it possibly be reactions to your actions? Because I think Rihanna got what she deserved. Flashback, February 8, 2009, a crime of passion swept the LA skies. Christopher Brown assaulted Robin F., a.k.a. Rihanna, on the way to an award show. An altercation spawned from a text message between him and a girl he used to be fond of. An argument abroad. He tried to push her out the door, but her seatbelt was buckled, so he clenched up his knuckles, then bam! Hit her with the right with his left while steering the vehicle with his left. At this moment, he's now thinking, now what do I have left? All of my accomplishments and accolades just seep into space because a matter of seconds. His lack of self-control just caught him a case, and the evidence is evident. He can't clean up his trace. All that's left in him are left in his fist to her face. Punches and punches. I'm going to beat your ass when we get home. You just wait and see. Punches and punches. Rivers of blood gushing down her face like the sea. Punches and punches. 1 inch raised circular contusions. Emotions battered and bruised down in uncertainty and confusion. Because of punches and punches to the face, arms, and legs. She brings her knees to her chest and tries to cover her head. His arms, like a boa, constricts her every breath, and reality sets in that this could be her very death because of punches and punches and punches and punches and punches. Then he stops and he flees the scene, leaving her alone on some unknown street. And she cries, "Someone help me, please." And thankfully, someone heard her cry. Someone called the police. Okay, now fast forward. I had to pinch myself just to convince myself that I was not dreaming. Did my ears deceive me? And right when I thought it couldn't get any worse, she said, besides, it's Chris Brown. He could beat me anytime. Hey. True story. The chuckles emerged. Her friends were laughing it up, high-fiving each other, dapping it up. And the teacher's trying to end this class, wrapping it up. But I can no longer sit in silence. Enough is enough. I don't see what's so funny. So you think you're so tough until it's your face meeting the punches, getting roughed up. Your protector, your lover, who says they love you like no other. Emotionless dark eyes reveals a monster undercover in his voice. That lullaby, sweet melodies now verbally assault you, abusing your mind. And that body that you find so attractive and so fine with his hard rock ads give you hard rock jazz. Beats you till you black and blue. Now you rocking a hard rock cast, and the flash of his smile will cast you into denial. He'll proclaim his innocence to sell you lies that don't make sense, like I hit you because I care. It'll never happen again. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you there. It'll never happen again. I didn't see those set of stairs. It'll never happen again, but It will happen again and again and again and again until you grow numb and you see no end to this madness, but you're glad this is him that brings you down. For goodness sakes, come on, right? It's just Chris Brown, but abusers and users. Come in all shapes and sizes. Come from all walks of life. Covered in all different disguises. When it's a celebrity, it seems that we just turn the other cheek. Convincing ourselves that stuff don't stink when it really reeks. Mike Tyson, Sean Penn, Bill Cosby, Ray Rice. I guess if the talent's there and the money is good, abuse can come with a price. And may their dollar bills be the bag of money that heals your bruises full of ice. Your pain in exchange for their gain is just a sacrifice. But in all actuality, you're a disrespect to the woman who didn't have a choice, woman in this class, in this room, who didn't have a voice. You're an insult to those who died fighting for their lives. Daughters, sons, aunts, uncles, husbands, and wives. Doesn't matter a person's stature or hierarchy in society. No living being deserves to be violated violently, which is why I had to pinch myself just to convince myself that this is not a dream. Enough is enough. I will not walk away silently, so may my words be an offense to your weak defense. May my words substitute your ignorance with common sense. And when this is said and done, and you still haven't learned it, and you still think she earned it, I hope one day you find your Chris Brown. And I hope he don't think you deserve it. Thank you. Thank you, y'all. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I could keep this.
Do you all want to take a vote? Who has to go next? Rachel, you win. Rachel Clay, from Raleigh, North Carolina, a recent graduate of Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina, where she double majored in political science and women's studies. She is the North Carolina Election Protection Coordinator for Ignite North Carolina. Couldn't be more important. Rachel, please join us.
I was going to have to go after Enrique. I was like, oh. Hi, my name is Rachel Clay. I just graduated from Appalachian State University. Woo, go Nears. Not really, I have a lot of debt. But I interned at FMF this summer. And yeah, I'm the North Carolina Election Protection Coordinator. Since the fall of 2014, I have worked for a nonprofit called Ignite NC. We are a project of the Southern Vision Alliance. We spurged in response to the massive voter suppression bill that was passed in 2012, 2013, directly after the Voting Rights Act was gutted by the Supreme Court. We are a student-led initiative, and we are working to build power and leadership in young people and students in the South. During my time at Appalachian State, I worked to organize the campus community around a multitude of issues such as voting rights, gender-based violence, anti-racism, LGBTQ justice, and student power. Woo! So I have a speech. I'm going to read. I'm going to try and look up as much as I can. Being students does not entitle us to be the activists or organizers at the forefront of social movements. In fact, I believe that for us to create a better world, we must trust those most affected by injustice to be the leaders who create and implement solutions to the problems facing our world. Students have been and continue to be a historic element of transforming society. Solutions to the problems facing our campuses and communities lie within our ability to work together and build real student and youth power. As students, we have the resources, the platform, the opportunity to motivate and organize students on our campuses and people in our communities. Because of this, we carry a great responsibility to build student power and to build it in a way that leaves no one behind. As college students, we must be aware of how we engage within the academy, always complementing our theory with practice. To be conscious is to be duty-bound. As students, it is our duty to affirm and uplift the narratives of those sustaining the very important work being done outside of our campus community. We must know our history, understand our past, learn from mistakes, and always defend tirelessly the gains made by those before us. The myriad of injustices we face as students, as female students, as queer and trans students, students of color, neuroatypical or disabled students, are symptoms of a large and sweeping structural oppression that is both manifested in and sustained by every institution in this country. And whether it is the suppression of our vote, the racist and classist attacks being made against HBCUs, nationwide negligence towards campus sexual assault and gender-based violence, state-by-state failure to extend in-state tuition and financial aid to undocumented students, or the overall privatization and corporatization of public education, the message is clear. Students are a threat, they are scared of us, and they should be. It was just 2 weeks ago that over 5,000 students, faculty, and campus community members walked out in North Carolina to protest the appointment of a racist, exploitative, unqualified, and undemocratically appointed UNC system president, Margaret Spellings. Less than a week after this, Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest released a plan to propose the Campus Free Expression Act. This act would bar any UNC system student, employee, or faculty member from disrupting public meetings or events with protests. The message that we received is very clear. Students are a threat, and we do have a lot of power. So we must continue to build the leadership and power of students across this country. Educate, motivate, organize. We must always critically engage with ourselves and others, both within and outside of our movements, and make sure that no one is left behind. Solidarity is a verb. As students, we often benefit greatly from the oppression and violence enacted upon the very communities our campuses are located in. We have no choice but to acknowledge this. We cannot organize students to protest tuition and fee increases while ignoring the role our university has played in the violent displacement and gentrification of the communities surrounding our campuses. We cannot demand our universities divest from fossil fuels without demanding divestment from private prisons and detainment centers, particularly as the increasingly unbearable cost of higher education continues to feed a racist, xenophobic, imperialist, and predatory military and prison industrial complex. We cannot focus all of our efforts on Title IX and campus sexual assault while those who do not attend universities, particularly low-income, black and brown, and rural communities, are left with a broken criminal justice system and severely underfunded rape crisis centers and domestic violence shelters. To be a student is to inhabit a unique role and to fight back against very uniquely targeted attacks made against us. However, we cannot rise against these systems of oppression while ignoring those most vulnerable in our communities, those who are facing the very same systems of oppression, but without the tools and resources that we as students have. Bridging the gap between campuses and communities is vital to understanding our place within these social movements. We cannot focus on the boots on our necks at the expense of seeing whose necks our boots are on. History has shown and continues to show that students carry the potential to create lasting change for a better world. We have the tools and resources to tap into our power as students and to organize towards a future of equality, a future of equity, and most importantly, a future of liberation. I'm sure that many of us, if not all of us in this room, have seen the image of 3 people standing behind a fence. Each person is a different height, but each has just one box to see over the fence. That image is labeled equality. In the next image, we see the same 3 people, all different heights, each with enough boxes to see over the fence. That image is labeled equity. As students, we must envision a world of liberation, building power within our campus community and engaging with the communities around us. We must build both student power and people power, working towards a future of liberation, a future where there is no fence at all. As a student, As a student and now a graduate, I envision a student movement for liberation and justice. I am hopeful, inspired, and humbled to be in a room full of so much potential. I look forward to continuing to fight alongside all of you in a movement that leaves no one behind, so that one day we can all be our authentic selves, lead full lives, and be free. Thank you very much.
In 1997, 96, 97, we began to hear news stories coming out of South Asia, Central Asia, about a militia called the Taliban, which was quickly overtaking major sections of Afghanistan. And as the Taliban would take over a territory, they would announce new rules and regulations, especially directed at women and girls. All girls' schools would be closed. All women attending university were no longer allowed. Women who were working as teachers and doctors and nurses and lawyers and business owners were to immediately quit their jobs and return to their homes, not to be able to even leave their homes without an adult male relative, a close male relative, a husband, a father, a son, a brother, to escort her, fully shrouded in a garment called the burqa, which most women in the cities of Afghanistan had never owned, didn't own. They could not make noise with their shoes. They could not wear white socks. They could not be heard in public. They could not laugh. We immediately began to reach out to human rights organizations asking what we could do to help. Surely there must be an effort to stop this most systematic oppression of human rights. We knew that the Clinton administration and the United Nations were deliberating whether or not to recognize the Taliban as the official new government of Afghanistan and to allow the Taliban to take the seat at the United Nations of Afghanistan. Were we to recognize a regime that, in fact, had imposed gender apartheid? Nobody else seemed to be looking at it at the time, and so we took it up. We just couldn't believe that an entire country could be plunged into this darkness without someone raising objections. And so we began to hold demonstrations outside the embassy here in Washington, D.C. of Afghanistan. We began, this was before email became so extensive, we began to petition and send letters to the State Department, to the President, and to Congress. We began to meet with our allies in Congress and ask them to speak out, to condemn the horrific violations of women's human rights in Afghanistan, and to refuse recognition. It took about a year and a half, but finally, in 1998, the President of the United States, then President Clinton, First Lady Hillary Clinton, the Attorney General of the United States, Janet Reno, the Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, joined by Kofi Annan, the Secretary General of the United Nations, in an International Women's Day celebration at the White House, announced that until women's human rights had been fully restored, there would be no recognition of the Taliban. That is the power of organizing and action and speaking the truth. And we are joined today by a young woman who grew up in Afghanistan. She's one of our young Afghan women scholars. We've joined forces with women's rights groups in Afghanistan to make this continuing fight for the restoration and guarantee of women's human rights and girls' human rights. We've been extraordinarily fortunate to meet some incredibly courageous leaders, feminist leaders in Afghanistan, who risked their very lives to speak out and to be leaders in this movement. We are joined today by Mahkfi Azizi. She is now working with us at the Feminist Majority Foundation. She attended Mount Holyoke College and I think just got some very good news on graduate school. I will let her tell you. Mahkfi, please join us.
Hi, everyone. Is this working? Yeah. Hi, everyone. I first want to thank Ellie, Kathy, Galen, Devern, and the entire team at the Feminist Majority Foundation for their campaign, tireless campaign for the Afghan women for such a long time, and for their devotion for Afghan women. I'm Mahkfi Azizi. I went to Mount Holyoke. I majored in international relations and English. And I just got admitted to Fletcher and Duke. And I just want to tell the whole world I'm so happy. Thank you. 3 years ago, I was home for the summer in Kabul, Afghanistan. I was shopping with my dad, my sister, and my brother. My brother said something funny, and I laughed. I laughed really loud. But that's not expected of an Afghan woman to laugh really loud in public. There were some heads kind of raising, who is this woman? But we just kept walking. It was fine. Nobody said something. But that was not the reality 15 years ago. 15 years ago, if you were an Afghan woman, you could not laugh in public. You could be beaten for that. Like Kathy said, you could not walk with heels because it made noise. You could not put any nail polish. And these are some very, very basic things. But most importantly, women were forced to sit at home. They were not allowed to go to schools. They were not allowed to get higher education. They were not allowed to work. And even if they needed to go to a doctor, they had to be accompanied by a male guardian. Today, I'm here standing before you, and I am an Afghan woman. I'm just not one. I'm one of millions who have the opportunity now to get an education, to work, and to speak for all humans, especially women who are the most oppressed in Afghanistan and countries like Afghanistan. Today, we have here Merzia with us. She's also an Afghan woman and have similar story like me. She also came from Afghanistan and went to Meredith College. She spoke with you last year. These are just two examples of the millions of Afghan women who have worked hard to get what they deserve and what they need. But we got it with the help of the international community and with the advocacy groups of like the Feminist Majority Foundation, who spoke for Afghan women, who didn't have a space to raise their voice. Like all of you today, Afghan women work hard every day. Work hard to create a safe space at their homes, in public, in schools, and in their workplaces. And like all of you here, we also work hard to get jobs. Jobs in any rank, not just a job to be an assistant to a man. Today, we have more than 3 million girls going to schools. 20 to 25% of, thank you. 20 to 25% of our higher education are women. And if they are given the opportunity to get higher education because they think that girls just do not pass the test to get to universities and colleges, and if that had ever changed, you would see more and more women in higher education. 36% of our teachers are women. And believe it or not, they work for a lot less than you can imagine. They get $60 to $200 per month. But they work hard to educate their next generation because they know what it's like to not have an income and to be dependent on the male members of the family. We have courageous politicians in our parliament. 69 women occupy the seats, which is 25% of our parliament, the upper and lower house. This is impressive because not in many advanced countries you see many women representing and occupying the seats in the parliament. We have women studying STEM, law. We have business women. Their businesses might be very small and local, but they know the benefits and they know the need for being independent and having their own income and contributing to the family. They're also very active in civil society. Just last year, they organized the biggest protest for the killing of an Afghan woman in Kabul. It was the biggest in the history of Afghanistan. They speak for women, they speak for the discriminations, and they speak for the violence that is happening at homes and in public against women. Sometimes you talk about numbers and they say, okay, it's just a number and it's not impressive. But believe me, for a country like Afghanistan and in such a short time, it has been just 15 years, these gains are really, really substantial for Afghan women. You get from 500,000 to 3 million to get to school. From no women in higher education, you get 20 to 25%. And no women in parliament, we didn't have any at the time. We have 69 women now. Afghans are really resilient, and Afghan women are especially resilient. They do not give up. They're fearless, and they continue their job for equality. Afghan girls have suffered a lot. Assets were thrown in their faces just to sit at home and not get an education, but they never gave up. Despite all these challenges, we still have a long way to go. Violence still remains a serious issue. Domestic violence at homes and in public spaces. But we have women and supporters like the Feminist Majority Foundation to continue the work. Women who ran for offices, they were threatened to death, but they continued. And it's mostly the women in the parliament who speak for other women, who stand for women's rights. And I have to tell you, men would never understand what a woman deserves unless a woman stands for herself and demands the rights for herself. I see a lot of challenges and we often get kind of frustrated, discouraged, but I'm really hopeful. I'm hopeful that Afghan women will someday achieve the equality that they deserve because of the work that we're doing. I urge you to learn about Afghanistan, to learn about Afghan women, and get involved. Speak for yourselves, stand for yourselves, Start with yourself, but do not stop there. Our fights, our issues might be different. Our priorities for fighting to achieve the equality might be different, but our fight is really, really the same. The fight for equality, the fight for creating a safe space at our homes, safe space in our schools, safe space in our workplaces, and in public. We do not have to think, oh, this man looked at me because I laughed really loud. I was embarrassed. I shouldn't be embarrassed. That's my right. That's my space as well. Today, you're all here because you care about yourselves and you care about women's rights. And that's very, very important. Please continue the work, continue to achieve ERA and CEDA, the Convention on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. It's very important because that's where it starts. If we have the laws in place, there would not be such setbacks. Because we do not have the laws, we get so much backlashes. And again, it's only the women who knows what they deserve and what they need. The men cannot speak for us. They will not speak for us. Thank you.
I'd like to next introduce you to Somi Potavath, a junior at South Lakes High School here in Northern Virginia, and a leader in her Girls Learn International chapter. Girls Learn is a program of the Feminist Majority Foundation. It's our high school girls' rights, human rights organizing program, comparable to our Choices program, but in high schools. We now have more than 205 high schools across the country with Girls Learn chapters. They are representing us this week at the United Nations. They are representing all of us at the United Nations this week with their fight for girls' rights. You're going to hear about some of the amazing work that they're doing. Please join me in welcoming Somi.
Hi, it's such a great pleasure to be here. When I think of girls' education, I think how worldwide 78 million girls lack basic literacy skills. I think of how girls make up more than half of the 101 million children not in school. I think of how this lack of education drastically limits a girl's future opportunities and how it often leads to the 3,900 child marriages a day. I think of how an educated girl is stronger, more self-reliant, and most of all, more liberated. But what I and many of us don't think of is the inequalities found in the most developed countries. As a nation, we don't empower our students with human rights education. We don't teach our children that girls have just as much of a say as boys, that girls can be as smart as boys, even in subjects like STEM, that girls can be just as successful as boys, that girls and boys are equal. And it wasn't until my sophomore year of high school when I realized that I, too, was ignorant in this way. It wasn't until I joined Girls Learn International, or GLI, that I became educated in the human rights. Over the past 2 years, GLI has taught me about the subconscious inequalities we each experience in our daily lives. That outspoken girls are accused of being bossy. Boys get called on more in class more often and make fun of girls who are interested in technology. They get the better sports equipment and more sports money. Girls are pushed to dress sexily, even at 9 and 10, and their photos in magazines are airbrushed. Through GLI, I've learned about initiatives that work towards ending this inequality, such as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which works to ensure that all girls and boys complete free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education by 2030. I've learned about He for She, a UN initiative led by Emma Watson, which advocates for boys and men to be involved in feminism, and the concept that to further gender equality is to further human rights. But out of all the amazing things GLI has taught me, the most outstanding by far is that I can make a difference. In GLI, we have financially supported girls' schools in India, collected clothes for the Malala Fund, and raised awareness in our schools and communities of the work that still surrounds human rights. But most of all, we have educated those around us to finally see gender inequality as a persistent problem rather than just an abstract headline. This is not a distant problem, but one that impacts each and every one of us in our local community. And I'm not the only one. Our college sisters should know that high schoolers are also on the front lines making a difference. How many of us are here today? To be a feminist is not to just say you are one. To be a feminist... To be a feminist is to care about the progression of equality, to realize that your voice matters. To be a feminist that makes a difference is to understand that you yourself can work to prevent gender-based violence. You can help girls in developing countries regain the education that was stolen from them, just because of society's unbalanced expectations of women and girls having to help their families at home. You can help your own peers realize that they are equals in the workplace. You can teach the children in your life that they have equal opportunity regardless of their gender. To further girls' education, you don't have to create a nonprofit or be a member of the United Nations. You can start by educating yourself and those around you. If your younger sibling is interested in starting a GLI chapter, come to the high school caucus or come talk to me to get more information about it. It's also right in your kit. Because educating yourself is the first step to educating girls and increasing equal rights around the world. Thank you.
It's a very exciting program, and as Somi said, younger sisters or brothers, this is a co-ed program in high schools all across the country. Urge them to start a GLI chapter in their school. There's information in your packet. As Somi said, we're about to break into caucuses. There is a high school caucuses. The other caucuses are all based by region. They are outlined in your program book. And I have an announcement. There's also a multicultural people of color caucus that will organize in the lobby here of the hotel. So please get to one of the caucuses. Very, very important to be able to share ideas and strategies and the work that you're doing and to meet other activists in your region. And then please, everybody be back here in this room after the following bank of workshops at 3:30 so we can get fired up and ready to go. Thank you very much.